As a contractor, I don't pay for materials I don't use. So why would I pay for stuff I don't need in my mobile plan? That's why the new MyBiz plan from Verizon Business is so perfect. Now I can choose exactly what I want, and I only pay for what I need.
Right now, with MyBiz plan, get our best price, as low as $25 a line. Visit Verizon.com/business to get started today. New lines only. Price per month with 5+ lines. Includes auto pay and paper-free billing and promotional discount. Taxes, fees, economic adjustment charge. Applicable add-ons, prices, and terms apply. Guarantee applies to base monthly rate and stated discounts only. Add-on prices additional. Offers end September 30th, 2025.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
This episode is brought to you by Nature's Bounty. Nature's Bounty believes your body is brilliant, naturally designed to thrive, inside and out. For those always looking for new ways to support your health from head to heels, Nature's Bounty has a range of over 400 vitamins and supplements born from 50 years of trust and care. Nature's Bounty. It's in your nature. Visit naturesbounty.com to learn more.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for our matchday preview. It's once again a matchday at the Stadium of Light. Sunderland taking on Aston Villa on a Sunday afternoon this week, which I hate. I hate when they move the games for the telly, but we can't complain too much. We've managed to make it to the end of September and this is the first time they've moved one of our games for television, so there we go. And join me today, I've got two lovely young men with me. First up is Andrew Smithson. You don't like it when I call you young, do you?
I think it was a combination of lovely and young that caught us on the hop there, Gav.
I'm gonna have to come up with some more creative things to call you to get you even get you on the hop even more. And also with us is Martin Wanless. Hello, mate.
Hello, Gav. Yes, I haven't been called young for a while, so that's a very nice start to a Sunday. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, it is indeed Sunday, and Sunderland play again this afternoon. We've got Aston Villa, who, when I saw this fixture when the list came out back in whatever it was, July or June or whenever it was when the fixtures came out, when I seen this one on paper, I'm looking at it and I'm going, whoa, Villa. You know, there's one of the best teams in the country, a team who, you know, are going to be coming to the Stadium of Light, scent and blood, and that may well be the case. But as me and you were just talking about, Martin, before we hit record, you managed to listen to my chat yesterday with Jacob Tanswell from The Athletic. Jacob, who writes about Aston Villa for The Athletic, and you had the same impression of me coming away from that his negativity about Villa's chances and just the way things are, it didn't have the effect it probably should have on us. Like, we should be hearing those things and saying, bloody hell, Sunderland have got a great chance. Like, you know, and we do have a great chance, but you're feeling within, you don't get that feeling, do you? Instead, you hear all those things and you just like get that sense of dread almost, don't you? It's there's something very strange about hearing that the team you're about to play is just in a state of chaos at the minute.
Well, it's the law of Akinbayi, isn't it? So as Sunderland supporters, we know that we are traditionally a very good team when a team's struggling to score goals or a player's struggling to perform. We're typically a very good team to play because we tend to be generous. But as we've talked about a lot over the last few months, I think this is very different. I think as a team and as a club, we're very different. You know, the podcasts that me and Andrew and Chris and Calvin and Gav, you're on now and again on this week, we've talked a lot about typical Sunderland. And what we need to hope and have confidence and belief in is that there's a completely new definition of typical Sunderland. And I think this is going to be a test of that today. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. And obviously we'll get into what we think will happen and who will play and all that sort of stuff. But on paper, like if you're a neutral, you're looking at this game and going, great chance for Sunderland to pick up 3 points. And that's how we have to have a look at it.
Yeah, that's right, isn't it, Andrew? We've we've got this new attitude this season, son, and us as fans, and I've said this to a few people. I see all these games as blessings. The fact that my season ticket now gets me into the ground, and I get to watch Premier League football, and I get to watch hundreds of millions of pounds worth of world-class, top-level footballers. It's a blessing to me that we get these opportunities. So you've got to treat every single game in that way. You don't take a single second for granted, do you, when it comes to this season?
No, you don't. And despite the fact we've been in the Premier League before, Gav, it's still exciting. As you say, Sunderland v Aston Villa just sounds like a fairly big game. Yeah, we do have to enjoy this. I think we can enjoy it even more because we're giving it a really good go. And you mentioned there your feelings when the fixtures first came out. I'm finding it hard to keep my feet on the ground, because there is a big part of me saying, hey, this afternoon we've now got a very good chance of beating Aston Villa. To me, last season they were one of the strongest teams in the division. And you would have thought, Sunderland have got no chance against them. Whereas I think we have a really good chance. Aston Villa, since missing out on the Champions League on the final day of last season, seem to be in a bit of a negative headspace for some reason at the moment. And yeah, it's just a case of whether, as Johnny Hawley put it on one, it's just a case of whether Dr. Sunderland have changed their ways, and instead of being this club who were able to gift teams in iffy form a nice way out, it's just a case of whether we can get past that and produce the goods.
Yeah, you see their team, don't you, Martin? And you see some of the names that they've got. I mean, despite the fact that Yuri Tielemans, for instance, he's going to be out, and Andre Onana, is it Andre Onana? No, that's the guy from Man U, isn't it? Onana, the centre mid, I can't remember his name.
Amadou. That's him.
Amadou, yeah, possibly. Yeah, he used to play for Everton, but they paid 50 million for him. These are proper superstars. They're players who are going to be missing. And then you look at the team that'll be probably taking on us. You're looking at Ollie Watkins, Morgan Rogers. Out wide, you've got Jadon Sancho, Harvey Elliott. At the back, Consau's an England international. Emi Martinez, who's he's widely regarded as the best goalkeeper in the world. Didn't he win the equivalent of whatever the Ballon d'Or's Golden Glove is 2 years on the spin? Won the World Cup with Argentina. These are a serious outfit. But we've talked about this before, that you can have brilliant players. There's teams gone down out the Premier League with players of that level. I remember West Ham getting relegated with some unbelievable players. They had, Defoe, Carrick, Ferdinand, yada yada yada. These players, and they struggled. So ultimately, you can have all the best players, can't you? You can have all these great players, but if something's not clicking and something's not going right off the pitch, and the managers maybe these ideas that were getting across in previous years, if they're not getting across all of a sudden, it doesn't actually count as much as you think it should. Especially when you come up against a team who are well motivated, well drilled, and also very talented. And that's kind of my hope for this weekend, is that regardless of, you can't just look on paper at the two teams. You've got to look at Aston Villa and go, actually, this is a real opportunity for Sunderland to take some points, regardless of how decent their squad is.
I think it's really interesting with Villa this season, right? And I was listening to an Athletic podcast yesterday, and they were talking about why a number of teams had started slowly. And they were kind of talking in terms of like goal scoring as well. I think last weekend in the Premier League, there was, relatively low. I think it was 19 goals in 20.
Match of the day was naff last Saturday, wasn't it?
Wasn't it? But they were talking about that, and talking about how some teams had started slowly, and they put it down to the number of changes in personnel that a lot of teams had. These players are still getting to know each other, still getting to play with each other, still figuring each other out. Managers are still getting used to different players, getting to know different players, all that sort of stuff. That doesn't really apply to Villa. They've had a relatively stable side over the past couple of years, and I know there's a couple of players, Harvey Elliott being one of them, who was really impressive in the under-21 tournament over the summer.
Well, Jacob said, didn't he, that the defence that's likely to play against Sunderland was built by Dean Smith? who've
Well,
not
that's
been
right.
the
So
manager for like 4 years.
they've been there for an awful long time. So this isn't a case of an Aston Villa side that, the manager and supporters don't know what they're capable of. They know what the side's capable of. They haven't started the season well. The opposite kind of applies to us, doesn't it? We still don't truly know what our side is capable of. We've talked previously about the number of players who've come in. Today's lineup, I reckon there's probably only going to be one player from last season in the starting lineup, and obviously we'll come on to discuss that later on. That's the really exciting thing for me, the unknown. We don't know what the ceiling is for this team, and Aston Villa know what the ceiling is for their team, and obviously they're not getting anywhere near that at the moment. And it's a really interesting game for us. We've had 2 home games so far, West Ham and Brentford, and 2 sort of different games, but we've kind of seen glimpses in large spells of both games of what certain players are capable of and what the potential is. And for me, watching, especially the home games, away games to some extent as well, but the home games, I think we've got more chance with a crowd behind us, and it feels like a big game, a cup final. We can see the players getting better and better at home, and hopefully all of it kind of comes together again today, as it has done against West Ham and Brentford, because it excites me what the potential of this team is. Like I talked last week, I think, about the likes of Diarra. We haven't really kind of seen him fully kick on to his potential. Régis Le Bris in his press conference talked about Talby's potential, and he's started well, but he's got so much more to give. He's a very young player, and you can kind of apply that conversation to the vast majority of players in the squad. So it's I think it's a really exciting time, a really exciting game. But to come back to Villa, you know what they've got in the locker. You know what they're capable of because we've seen it over the past few seasons. So while it's a great chance for us to get 3 points, it absolutely is, because they're not in great form, we know what they're capable of. And if they rediscover the form, if they click, it's going to be a really, really tough game.
Yeah, that is what makes this interesting, Andrew, isn't it? The fact that we know so much about Villa, and Villa know so much about themselves, given, like I mentioned there, a lot of these players have played together for years and years. I mean, you go right through that team, and probably 6 or 7 of their starting 11 against us is going to be players who've probably played together for 4 or 5 years now, at least. Whereas with us, we don't even know enough about this Sunderland team. So we're Sunderland, we're nerds, right? We're proper Sunderland nerds. We sit and talk about the team every day, and we write about the team for the website, and we're obsessed with Sunderland. Yet I cannot put my finger on this team. I don't know what it's capable of. I don't know what the ceiling is. Everyone's telling us, the bookies are still saying they think Sunderland are going to go down. But you look at us play, and I don't see a team who look like they're going to struggle. And that might be famous last words. We're 4 games into the season. This will be the 5th today. We're very, very early days. But I'm coming away from every game and I'm going, we look like a proper Premier League team. We don't look like a team who's just been promoted. And that unknown makes us pretty dangerous, at least in the first couple of months of the season, before teams can figure us out. Because we've seen it before, haven't we? We've seen teams get promoted and totally bamboozle everybody because nobody knows how they're going to play. I mean, even non-promoted teams, I remember, what was it, not last year, but the year before, when Ange Postecoglou took over at Tottenham, and for the first 10 games of the season, they blew everybody away because people just didn't have a clue how he played. And then eventually, because all these clubs have world-class coaching and data and analytics, they figure things out eventually. But it must be so hard to analyse Sunderland, mustn't it, for these opposition teams? They're kind of looking at it and they're going, yeah, we can look at the individual profiles of the teams, but they're very difficult to work out, Sunderland. And again, as I just said earlier, you've got to take advantage of these moments and these opportunities, I think, because whilst we're hard to work out, teams are going to struggle against us, I think.
They are, and certainly at home, Gav, our stadium-like form this season is going to be really important. You're right, Sunderland are hard to pin down, particularly as an outsider. I mean, I don't know why I came on here to be insulted and be called a nerd, Gav, but fair enough. It's probably fair, that one. But yeah, we've got players who are new to the division, they're new to the country also, and they're new to each other. So you look at that Crystal Palace game and you look at the two lads we had in central defence. They were fantastic. But how many minutes have those lads played together? How much time on the training pitch have it was McKaylee, wasn't it, and Alderete playing in the middle. So as all of these players are settling in and finding their own feet, they're also learning about each other, what type of positions and what type of things they want to be doing. So, yeah, there is a lot of untapped potential in the team. And like yourself, I think so far we have looked like we belong in this division. And that's only early days. There's a lot more to come, I think.
I completely agree that we have looked really comfortable and we've looked as if we belong in the Premier League. I think, going back to the Palace game, you talked about Alderete there. He was one of a number of players who'd been in international duty that week beforehand, hadn't he? And I think he played like on the Thursday morning in terms of time zones.
It was Wednesday morning our time, but when I worked it out, he would have probably stopped playing 4 or 5 in the morning our time on the Wednesday.
So his body clock's all over the place. He's in a different continent.
Yeah.
And you've got all of these players who are still new to each other coming back from international duty. And I think the performance at the Producer Palace was a real testament to the squad that's been built up, the spirit, the way Le Bris has got them organised and coached and all that sort of stuff. When you look at the stats for us and Aston Villa this season, right? Obviously, Villa have had a poor run of form. I think that obviously they haven't scored a Premier League goal yet, as we well know. But in terms of the actual stats of performance, right? So we've conceded 3 goals this season. They've conceded 4. And I think 3 of them were at home against Palace, weren't they? And had that game against Palace the week before we played Palace. Us and Aston Villa have both had 26 shots all season, right? We've had 9 shots on target. They've had 10. And we've scored, 6 goals? 5 goals? Mm-hmm. And they've scored 5 goals and they haven't scored. We've had 17 shots off target. They've had 16 shots off target. We've had 11 blocked shots. They've had 14 blocked shots. Our passing accuracy is 82%. Theirs is 84%. So in terms of actual performances, take results out of the way. And look, they've had some tough games, right? Regardless of what we all think about Newcastle, playing Newcastle's a tough game. Everton away at the new stadium, tough game. Brentford away, they got beaten. Palace at home, they got beat. But we can't underestimate what this side's capable of, because in terms of the actual play, and I know, we spoke or referenced the podcast that you did with the lad who does the Aston Villa writing for the Athletic. And, listen to that, you kind of going, he's talking them down, he's saying everything's not right, the manager's struggling to get things over, all that sort of stuff. But again, to reiterate, they are a really good side, and we have to be really cautious about this one. But look, again, if we kind of play to the potential that we have, or anything near the potential that we've got, we could get a point or 3, hopefully, couldn't we?
Those stats there are really interesting, Martin, about how we've had a similar amount of attempts, and yet we've made our attempts count more.
Yeah.
Does that just emphasise that point again, that at the moment Sunderland seem to be on a roll, and Aston Villa do have this kind of negative mood around them at the moment? You see that a lot. You see teams compete in games, they do okay, and then they don't get the result they want. Whereas Sunderland at the moment, our 2 home games so far, it's almost as if the mood around the place and the support has carried us on from turning a good performance into a winning performance. And I just found those stats interesting. I think they perhaps tell us a lot about where the 2 teams are at the moment.
Well, I think it tells us a lot about where the crowd is as well, and the support. Because, West Ham game and, more tellingly the Brentford game, pushing on at the very end, getting roared on to get that last goal to win the game. Like, to me, say if you were playing that game in COVID times when there's no crowd, that finishes as a draw because the crowd momentum gets behind. And I was thinking about this earlier, and I think we've talked a lot about the way the fixtures have fallen, right? And how, potentially it's fallen kindly for us, but it's only kind if we get off to a winning start and get some points on the board. Games against West Ham, Brentford, even Aston Villa to a large extent, if they were played in March and we were struggling down the bottom, the atmosphere in those games is completely different, isn't it? It's quite tense. People are kind of fragile in terms of where they're going because they're so nervous. And the fact that we've been able to harness the crowd, and the club have done a brilliant job off the field of actually building that atmosphere and building that feeling like it is a cup final almost. And it builds, doesn't it? So the West Ham game, obviously the first game, that's naturally going to be a big, exciting game for everybody, packed house. If we get turned over there, the Brentford game's difficult for the crowd, right? But we won the West Ham game. Brentford game comes along. We go at the end, get that last-minute winner. And then that builds again for today's sellout game. And hopefully we kind of get on that roll with the home crowd because we've all seen the stadium alight when it's fantastic atmosphere-wise and the difference that can make. And we've seen the opposite, right? We've seen the other side of it. And I think this is such an important game for us because if we can pick something up in this game, keep that momentum going in terms of the atmosphere between the players, but also in the fan base, and that positivity that every day we're talking about the positivity and the good things at Sunderland. And if we can keep that going, we can start getting on a roll, and it snowballs. And the players feed off it, the fans feed off the players, and all that sort of stuff. And then the press start talking about it more, and people are now talking about Sunderland being a Premier League team, genuinely competing in the Premier League, not just to make up the numbers like the promoted clubs have been previously, but actually adding something, feeling like a Premier League team. And I just think it's such an important game, this one. If we get a point today, like again, that just adds to what we're doing and keeps our momentum building. And I think it's so important that we try to do that.
Yeah, well, we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and chat all about systems, tactics, team selection, all that other good stuff, and predictions. See you in a minute.
This episode is brought to you by Contentful. Marketers, you know that feeling when your creative clicks? When that social post sends engagement through the roof? When your outside-of-the-box campaign hits ROI positive? When a personalized homepage turns prospects into customers? It's utter marketing bliss. Contentful helps you create tailored omni-channel experiences without working overtime. No stress, no limits, only possibilities. Get the feels at Contentful.com.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Right, and we're back, and we'll chat about how we think Sunderland are going to set up. And this was something I thought was quite interesting, actually, Martin, when I spoke to Jacob, and not really something I went into detail with him on, and I thought I would keep back for this one, is how stylistically we're very different. And this is probably the first time since we played West Ham where we're playing a team who play a completely different style of football to us. Jacob was telling us all about how Villa like to build up through the middle of the pitch, create boxes in midfield. They for all intents and purposes, they like to keep the ball. They like to dominate possession. They like to beat teams in that way. Whereas we've built a team which is the complete opposite. We've built a team which, for all intents and purposes, again, is just there to sit back, break, counter-attack, work very hard. We've got athletic midfield players who can who can really compete when it comes to second balls and things. And Jacob's telling us all these things about how their midfield's a little bit powder puff and doesn't particularly like it when, a team gets in amongst them and the second balls and stuff. That's not their forte. Don't really do very well against teams with pace and power. And I'm hearing all these things and I'm thinking that, like, stylistically, this is all of a sudden become a very interesting game to me, because he's basically telling us that everything Sunderland do pretty well is what Villa really struggle with. And like I say, you look at our games so far this season. West Ham came to dominate the ball, did a very bad job of it, and we caught them on the hop several times. Burnley away, another team who play with a low block. Brentford play with a low block. Palace play with a low block. So we've had 3 games on the bounce where we've basically played another team who do the same kind of thing we do. And then if you kind of look at the Villa results and how they've got on so far this season, I mean, they've played Brentford twice, once in the Cup and once in the league, lost both games against teams who play with a low block. Everton, not quite sure with that one, but they got battered off Palace 3-0. And we only just played Palace and we know how they like to play. They like to do the same thing we do. And then Newcastle at home, that was a strange game by all accounts, where Newcastle probably should have beat them, but Newcastle actually dominated the ball in that game. So, you kind of look at the 2 sets of results and you hear about the way they play. And again, I don't want to get carried away, but it does sound like the ideal scenario for us. I think, like, we're playing against a team who really do play completely differently to us.
Well, they do, by all accounts. Now, I watched that Villa-Newcastle game. Obviously, it was a few weeks back now, but, they looked there for the taking. If Newcastle had had a striker playing, probably would have got all 3 points. It's going to be interesting how we deal with it, because, while you rightly say that we're really happy to kind of soak up possession, we kind of don't do it defensively. I know that sounds a bit sort of contradictory, but it's not as if we kind of pin everybody back behind the ball and try to soak everything up and just get a counter-attack going, and that's it. We're quite happy. And I think we've, even more so than last season, this season we've been pretty comfortable in possession, taking control of the ball and trying to dictate play. I think you looked at the stats, and Xhaka's made the most amount of forward passes of any Premier League midfield player so far this season. So, it's kind of, I think we're kind of seeing an evolution in terms of how we play, because of the quality of players have increased. And I don't think this is a side, with the exceptions of, going away to Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, etc., etc. I don't think we'll really see us sit back. Even at Palace last week, we dominated large parts of that game. We didn't quite get the clear-cut chances that we probably would have liked to have created, but we didn't sit back and let them just come at us and come at us and come at us. We tried to control the game. And I think we'll do that again today. I don't think we'll let Aston Villa just have the ball for 70% of the game and just try to spring them. I think we'll try to overwhelm them in possession and then overwhelm them out of possession as well. I think we'll actually try to get our midfield pushing onto them to close them down and press. And it's going to be really interesting how Villa play into that. But I just think we've got the players. We've got the players to do really interesting things against Villa. And one of the things that I found interesting with Le Bris's press conference, Chris and me were talking about this thing after the Brentford game and after the Palace game, that a lot of our attacks seem to be going down the left rather than the right. And I don't know if Nick Barnes picked up on that when we had our podcast with him the other week. We kind of asked Le Bris about that, or one of the reporters asked Le Bris about that. And he kind of said, we're stronger positionally on the right, where Talby and Hume will do a really structured job. Whereas on the left, we've got more outlet, more creativity, more options. We've got more sort of variability, I guess, coming down the left. So he kind of said that was a bit of a tactic, because you can kind of get Siddiqui dropping in, spring Ronaldo, Adringa or Lefay coming in from the left to create some stuff. And it'll be really interesting to see if we try that a lot again today, or we try to kind of get attacks going down the right, because there's a risk that teams watch that and click on eventually and go, everything dangerous comes down the left for Sunderland, so we'll just close it off.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that, and we'll come on to this obviously when we talk about who we think the team's going to be, but it largely depends on who plays, doesn't it, Andrew? And yeah, like not to give too much away on what we think is going to happen in terms of team selection, but if it's a case of Talby and Adingra playing on the wings, then as Martin says, it's probably fairly obvious which side the ball's going to go down when we've got it. But if it's Enzo Lefebvre playing out on the left and maybe Adingra on the right, or Adingra dropping to the bench as we've seen a couple of times, then again, tactically we're very different. I think this is one thing that Le Bris has been keen to highlight, and he hasn't outright said this, but he's kind of danced around it, is that this season's very different to last season because he has so many good players now to pick from, where last year it was kind of horses for courses. We had a way of playing which suited just what he had. Whereas this year, he's actually been able to build a squad that can play in the way he wants it to and can be tactically flexible. And he actually talked a little bit, didn't he, about in his press conference, he talked a little bit about how the way we've looked at the front line, and Isidore and Mayenda can play wide. And we've already seen Isidore play on the left actually quite a bit. And surprisingly to me, done very well there. I shouldn't be surprised because before he signed for Sunderland, Isidore had played quite a lot of football on the left. But we didn't really see him there in the Championship. And when we did, I don't think he really had much of an impact. But I quite like what I've seen from Isidore playing out there. So the point being, whilst, yes, we can maybe be a little bit predictable in the approach, we've got very different types of players across that front line, haven't we, who can do different jobs. I think Isidore's very different to Adingra, and Adingra's very different to Lefebvre, and Lefebvre's very different to the other two. And it all depends on who ultimately plays in them positions, how we approach the game. Because he could chuck a complete curveball in there and start Mayenda on the right, couldn't he? And then Mayenda is totally different to Talby. Where I like Talby actually. I'm a little bit annoyed by how some people are talking about him because I think he's done nothing wrong. I think he's, if you're going to pick out an issue with Talby, it would probably be he's a little bit safe. But that's not always a bad thing because I don't want our players to give the ball away all the time. I quite like players who look after it and can bring others into play. But you compare him to Mayenda, and Mayenda is a totally different player. Mayenda's very direct and will take risks and will use his pace and direct running to try and get you in behind that defence. So yeah, it's going to be interesting seeing how we approach this game, and it'll all be on the sort of the players that he slots into them forward positions, I think.
It will be, and this is not by chance that we've got these types of players. This is clearly how the club have wanted to build their squad, with players who can do different jobs for different games. Talby's an interesting one for me, Gavin. You use the word safe, and I think that's fair. Not necessarily a bad thing, as you mentioned. He's new to the division. He's just getting his bearings, but we've seen enough from him to suggest that he could be a really good player for us for the rest of the season and start contributing a few more assists and what have you. So yeah, I like Talby, and a bit like yourself, I'm surprised that one or two people they're not digging him out, but there's question marks. There's question marks against him. But there's a lot of variety across that attacking three. And what really pleases me, we're talking a lot about the players on the pitch. What really pleases me is, for a fact that Le Bris fully understands their strengths and weaknesses. He will be looking closely at what Aston Villa's weak points are, and he will be picking names and giving them instructions based on that. There'll be nobody playing this afternoon because they're one of his favourites. They'll be because Le Bris is comfortable that they're the right person. As you say, that might make us hard to predict. If you were an opposition coach trying to pick out how Sunderland are going to do things, it's hard to do, but it gives us that variety, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to see these options. It gives us a decent starting point.
You've mentioned a few times, Martin, about the press conference, and he probably in terms of player selection and stuff, the biggest nugget he dropped was that Ballard and Enzo Lefebvre are going to be fit to be selected for this one if they're needed. He was asked about the defence that's played the last few games, though, and he kind of agreed with whoever was asking the question that was his starting defence. But could we make a case for bringing in Ballard into that defence, do you think? Because, yes, we've spoke a lot, certainly even this week, about his durability and the problem that brings with it. But for me, in that first game against West Ham, he was man of the match. He was brilliant in the playoff final. He was brilliant in the 2 semi-finals. Even in that 10 minutes he was on the pitch against Burnley, he played really well, and he created an unbelievable chance for Mayenda. And since then, Mukiele and Alderete have kind of held down them 2 central defence positions. But, I mean, these are nice headaches to have, aren't they? All of a sudden you're looking at it and you're going, could Dan Ballard potentially come in? What about Getrauda? I can't believe how many good players we've got now. But is there a case to be made that you could potentially bring in Ballard, or do you think you should just stick with what we've got?
I think it's a really strong case, because I think Ballard is a potentially Premier League quality defender. I think, say potentially because he hasn't proven it, but you look at all of his attributes and everything he's got, then he says he's got everything you need to succeed. And I think he gives us more physicality and aerial strength than Mukiele does.
I think we've lacked that, haven't we, a little bit in the first?
I think we have.
Yeah,
I do think we have, and I think it's been noticeable on a couple of occasions that we could have done with a little bit more power and strength and aerial ability in the centre of defence. The other thing that Ballard gives us is a goal threat. Like from set pieces, he gives us a real goal threat, and you're talking really small margins in Premier League success or otherwise, right? So I think that factor will come into the thinking as well, in terms of, if Ballard's in the team, we probably have statistically a stronger chance of scoring from a corner or a set piece than we would otherwise do. The other interesting thing when he's talking about his defence, now I will clarify all that and caveat all of that and say I actually think we'll probably go in with the same defence for today's game. But the thing I thought was really interesting, and I don't know if you lads picked up on this, he was asked about the defence and Trey Hume, and he kind of, to paraphrase what he said, he was essentially going, Trey Hume's been quite fortunate because we didn't strengthen in those positions early. So he was in the team and he's played well, he's acquitted himself well, and now he's in possession of the shirt. But he was kind of intimating that if we'd brought in Mukiele or Getrauda earlier on in the piece, then Trey Hume would have had a greater fight in his hands, which, stands to reason. So I think that in his mind, Trey Hume's kind of got a question mark against whether he is going to be a regular, and when that changes.
Was it? Sorry to jump in, Martin. Was it Jeff Brown talking to you who was talking about his physique?
Yeah,
the way you look at him. And
when Jeff was talking to Chris and Johnny after the Palace game, and he made the point that Trey Hume at Championship level looks a really strong physical player. Trey Hume in the Premier League looks an average physical presence because of the physical presence of everybody else around him, which is quite incredible, isn't it, when you kind of put it in those terms? But you can understand it. So I think in the short term we probably won't see any changes to the defence. However, the likes of Getrauda, Mukiele, and you go all over the pitch, Broby, all that sort of stuff. They have not come here to sit on the bench. They have not been sold a thing of, come to Sunderland, you'll be sub all season. They have come to play. Yeah. So, they've got to earn the place, quite rightly. And, the likes of Trey Hume, if they're in possession of the shirt and they're playing well, which I think Trey Hume has done so far this season, then I think it's only right that he keeps it. But there's so much competition. It's actually really hard to pick a back four. You look on the other side with, Masuaku hasn't had a look in. Mm-hmm. The only time he's played was the Huddersfield game in the League Cup, and I thought he looked really impressive. So you've got all of this competition all over the back four, which is great. But unlike in attack where you've got those options, you kind of want your defence to be solid and consistent and regular. So it's going to be interesting to see when he goes with what he thinks is his strongest back four. Because I think once he goes with it, that'll be relatively set for a period of time, bar injuries and suspensions.
As you're talking there, I'm almost shaking my head in disbelief. I think it's really important we take a moment and just think about some of the points you're making there. We're talking about Trey Hume here, who was our player of the season last year. We're talking about Dan Ballard, who for a couple of seasons now, everybody's been predicting is going to be, if fitness permitting, is going to make it in the Premier League. And now we're talking about, are those two going to be good enough to keep a place in the side? It's brilliant, the position we're in. And the best thing about it is we're talking about team selections, and it's not because somebody has been so poor that we've got to get them out the team sharpish, and how are we going to sort out, for argument's sake, our right back who's been having a stinker. It's which of our quality players are going to have to drop out to make room for full internationals.
It's nuts, like
just
it is nuts.
Yeah, and again, as we keep caveating, we've got to keep our feet on the ground and not get ahead of ourselves. But just to be in this position and to be having these discussions is a world away from previous Premier League seasons where you were almost pinning your hopes on 3 or 4 players, and the rest of them, it was just a case of, just chuck anybody anywhere and see how they get on.
I think the other interesting aspect to this, right, is a lot of the players that we're talking about, in fact, probably all of the players that we're talking about who were here last season, and you talk about Trey Hume, Ballard, chuck Dan Neil in the mix and other players like that. They are still young, and they will still improve and get better. And, you're not talking about Trey Hume being a finished product, or Dan Neil being a finished product, or even Ballard being a finished product. This season, they're going to get better and better and better. Whether they're actually playing a lot of first-team football or whether they're just training with the squad that we have, they're still going to improve. And the brilliant thing for me, because even if you cast your mind back to last season, right, Trey Hume had very little competition at right back. And I remember there was a spell after Christmas, until that international break after Coventry, where we went, bloody hell, Trey Hume's not been in great form. And then he came back after the international break. I think it was Millwall at home. He scored a goal, and his form picked up, and he was great for the rest of the season. But he had a sticky spell. Now, the brilliant thing for us is, and for the Premier League, I don't think you can afford to place players through sticky spells. In the Championship, we did, and quite rightly so. You look at Job, Dan Neil, other people like that, who we kept persevering with when they're going through a sticky spell of form. And we probably thought, either we need to, we can afford to, or a combination of those two factors. This season, we've got the options to go, if he's struggling, let's bring him out for a couple of weeks, put somebody else back in. And that's a great position for us to be in. And all of these players will be itching to get into the first team. And if Trey Hume's in possession of the shirt, he knows he's got to keep his performance levels up to the highest standard, because he's got 2 world-class, potentially, players who are trying to grab that shirt off his back.
Yeah. Well, we'll jump for another quick break, and then we'll come back and pick our teams and give some score predictions.
They got Willa. They got my daughter. I need to find her.
From acclaimed director Paul Thomas Anderson.
You can save that girl.
Today, experience what is being called the best movie of the year.
This is the end of the line. Not for you.
Leonardo DiCaprio, Sean Penn, Benicio del Toro, Tiana Taylor, Chase Infinity.
Let's go! Here I am.
One battle after another. Now playing only in theaters. Experience it in IMAX. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
You can't hide.
Finish training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Right, and we're back, and we'll chat about, I guess, the midfield very quickly then. So it doesn't seem to me, Martin, that will make any major changes in midfield. I think we know who the middle 3 are going to be when they're all fit, right? It's going to be Siddiqui Diarra and Xhaka. I think he was even asked, isn't he, in his press conference, Régis Le Bris, wasn't he, about Dan Neil and the fact that he never came on against Palace. Sorry, I couldn't remember who we played there. Against Palace, and it was actually Gertrude who came on in midfield, but I think he said something along the lines of when Siddiqui was early in the game was down, there was a possibility that Neil would have came on then, but sort of just because of the way the game was, it ended up being Gertrude later in the game for his defensive ability. But it is interesting, that shape up. I think it's very set in stone what we've got in midfield there, and it's actually the wide positions which seem to be the interchangeable ones at the minute. And I'm curious to see what you think about this, because I've got a suspicion it'll be Lefebvre who plays on the left, even though he seems to fancy a Dingra. I just think if Lefebvre's fit, I think because he knows we're not going to have the ball as much as we maybe have in a couple of the recent games, that it might be somebody who he knows tactically is very flexible and he loves Enzo Lefebvre, right? I think it'll be him on the left, but I don't know what you think, because you kind of hinted at the start you think only one of last season's team would be starting in this game. So what do you reckon?
So I think if you look at the centre of midfield, you've got Xhaka, who's going to play there when he's fit, quite rightly. Siddiqui and Diarra at present are in possession of the shirts, but these are two young lads, and they're going to go through dips in form as well. And as I said earlier, I don't think Diarra's really hit the straps yet in terms of what he can actually bring to the side. So I think you could argue at some point, I don't think it'll happen today, but you could argue Lefebvre comes into probably Diarra's position now and again. I think it's so important that we somehow get Lefebvre into the side. I just think he's different class, and his ability to pick a pass to put a striker or a forward through, I kind of think it's unparalleled with the rest of the squad.
Yeah,
the rest of the midfield have really strong attributes, but Lefebvre's ability to just pick that pass, slide that ball through, I think is just second to none. And to me, if I was picking the side, I'd put Lefebvre down first and then figure out the rest of the team around him to a large extent, because I just think his quality to pick that pass out is superb. On the wings, I think it's a really interesting proposition, right? So, we talked about Adingra potentially going all right. I thought Adingra did well on Saturday against Palace. I thought he showed in flashes some really good quality to get past his defender and get the ball into the box. If you remember back to the West Ham game, Adingra put the ball in from the right for Ballard's goal, I think it was, wasn't it? And he also had a bit of a spell playing out in the right when he came on as sub against Brentford. And I think he's looked quite bright there. Talby, who I've been a little bit critical of just in terms of his attacking performance, but I think he's acquitted himself really well, and I thought Palace was probably his best game in terms of his all-round play. He played left-hand side, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for the vast majority of time at his previous club. And I've been a little bit surprised we haven't tried to switch those two in game, just to kind of mix things up a bit. You've got Lefebvre, who I actually think will start, and I'm not sure where he'll start, but I think he'll start. I do think Xhaka and Diarra and Siddiqui will be the midfield three. So where Lefebvre kind of comes into that front three is kind of anybody's guess. And probably be off the left, which has been primarily for the vast majority of the season. The wild card I'd throw in is Traore. Now, you've got a former Aston Villa player, right?
Yeah.
Who can run really directly and gets efforts on goal. And in a game that we kind of expect to have, where it's going to be tight, we're going to have opportunities to counter. I think that ability to go direct and really drive towards a goal could be quite significant. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's kind of entered his thinking. I think he played for his international side. This is Burkina Faso he plays for.
Yeah.
I think he played for them in the week before the Palace game. So, he's match fit. And, if we were Villa fans, we'd be going, oh, what's going to happen here, wouldn't you? Yeah. So I do think there's that, whether that's off the bench or whether that's a start, I suspect he'll probably be off the bench, but I do think he'll play. The interesting thing with the wide positions to me is that if you look last season, we had almost like inverted wingers, wouldn't you? You'd say you got Roberts playing on the right, who's left-footed, and Mundell and whoever else playing out on the left-hand side, who are right-footed. We haven't kind of replicated that this season so far. Talby seems to be right-footed, and he'll go on the outside. So I think we've kind of maybe missed that little bit. And Le Bris has said we're a bit more structured down that side, so maybe that probably is deliberate, because we haven't then had the space for Hume to really overlap as much as he might want to. But that gives us a bit more defensive solidity when we're in possession. So it'll be interesting to see how we go with those wide positions. But if I was going to put some money on it right now, I would say Lefebvre will be on the left.
Yeah, great.
And I actually think Adingra might go on the right, only because I think Le Bris will want to avoid the left-hand side being Adingra versus Lefebvre. I think he'll want the flexibility to move them around. I think if Adingra's benched, Lefebvre comes in, it kind of pits those two directly against each other. And I kind of think you probably want to avoid it.
Yeah, it is an interesting proposition, that. I'm also, the other wild card I would kind of chuck in would be, it might not be a wild card because I've kind of already mentioned it, but Mayenda potentially playing off the right and having Broby or Isidore up front. What do you think about the strikers, Andrew? Who do you think might start through the middle?
I think Broby. I think the money we've spent on him and the fact that he wasn't on international duty, was he? I don't think, gents.
No.
So he's had a decent stint now to get a feel for the place, and I would be keen to see more of him. A really interesting point there about do we switch it up on the wings? Could Mayenda come in or what have you? Could Lefebvre come in? I really like this idea of in games flipping lads over to the other wing just for a period. You know, you're right. I think it was Martin made that particular point.
Yeah.
That would be something I would like to see, just to mix things up. And because the likes of Talby, from what we understood, one of their strengths was cutting inside and getting a shot away. So I would like to see that, but I do think Broby starts this afternoon. I just get the feeling that whilst we don't have a preferred 11, he might be somebody who gets the majority of games playing in that central forward slot.
Yeah, I'm still not sure. It all depends on his fitness, really. I'm with you, though. I think ultimately I want to see him start games. I think he's a very different profile to what we've got. And again, I'll just go back to something that Le Bris pointed out himself when he was mentioning that Mayenda and Isidore were flexible and could play wide. I don't know whether that was kind of a hint towards what we're potentially going to see, maybe, you know. We might well see very soon Broby playing up front with one of them on the wings. So, you know, and then they can go into a 2 when we haven't got the ball and almost play as a 4-4-2. And then when we have got the ball, you know, they kind of go wide and attack from the wings. I think it might be a little bit too soon for Traore. I don't know whether there's been question marks over his actual fitness levels in terms of being able to play 90 minutes in the Premier League or not. And Le Bris said something last week about how he kind of sees him as the replacement for Patrick Robertson coming off the bench and providing us with a spot when we need it and legs, but then obviously longer term being in contention for selection. So I think it'll be Lefebvre on the left, Mayenda on the right, and Broby up top.
Nah. I honestly can't see us spending so much money on wingers this pre-season and summer and putting Mayenda on the right-hand side. And Mayenda didn't really play on the right much last season anyway. I just don't see it.
Different forward line now, though, isn't it? I just think it depends on who you're playing. And given we're not going to have the ball very much, to have two players who you know are going to work back and be defensively solid and know his system inside out, I think I can see him, because he likes to play it safe for an hour or so, doesn't he? I could see him doing that and then maybe bringing on the more exciting players later in the game who can grab you a goal, bring on Isidore on the left even, bring on Traore for 20 minutes at the end to give you those legs and the spot that you might get from him.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we don't know the answer. And the reason we don't know the answer is because we've got, as we've touched on repeatedly, we've got so many good players and so many tactically flexible players. I mean, Broby's probably the only one out of the ones we've talked about there who isn't. He's an out-and-out striker, right? Everybody else can play 2 or 3 positions. And that's what we've done. We've went and recruited players who can play all over the place. So when it comes to trying to predict the team, makes it very difficult. And I think there's been a bit of a criticism of chance creation from open play. It hasn't been as big a problem in the home games. We've scored 5 goals all in. One of them was a penalty, obviously, but we've looked more threatening at home, but we're still not creating loads of chances. And I think Le Bris will be keen to try and figure that out and try different combinations and get that. Try and get a front three that kind of all clicks. And I actually think certainly in the next 2 or 3 weeks that Enzo Lefebvre is going to be part of that, because as you mentioned rightly, Martin, I think he's the one player we've got who can play that little reverse sliding pass in behind the defence, who can break the lines and get you in on goal. I think he's the one player we've got who can do that. Adingra's tricky. Adingra will take people on. Adingra will sit defenders down and he'll get crosses over. But I think if you're going to do that, you need a striker to hit. And that would mean pairing him with Broby, because Mayenda and Isidore, I know Isidore scored a couple of headers, so this probably sounds daft, but he doesn't win loads of aerial duels.
No.
He's not that kind of player. Talby on the other side wants to slip people in, so you have to get players with pace around him. And otherwise, if we're going to be sitting back quite a lot in this game, I feel like that's when Mayenda comes into his own. I think Mayenda, when you're certainly pinned back for periods of games and then you break, he's the best player we've got at carrying the ball forward. So I can just, when we talk about trying to get players into the team, it's not ideal to play Mayenda on the wing. It's not ideal to play Enzo Lefebvre on the wing. But I think there are games and situations where he would do that from the start and then tweak things later on in games.
Yeah, I think, we've said already that one of Talby's strengths is carrying the ball with pace. We've got a number of players now who can do it. Diarra, I think, is good at that particular thing. And, with the notion of creating a lot of chances, we didn't do that last season. And you looked at Le Bris at Lorient and the stats and everything that came out of his 2 seasons there. And the message was really clear. Like, they don't create many chances, but they take the chances they've got. They're solid at the back, and they are clinical. And I don't see us deviating from that much at all. I don't think we're going to all of a sudden turn into a side that's creating 9 or 10 really good chances every game. We're going to do what we've done against West Ham, Brentford. Obviously we didn't do it against Palace, and that's kind of raised an eyebrow or two. But creating 3 or 4 chances and taking 1 or 2 of them, I think, is going to be how most games, tend to pan out. Broby's a really interesting one for me. I think that's the biggest selection decision that we've really got for this game today. And I think it really depends on how he's looked in training. Like, if he's settled in, he's looked fit, he's looked sharp, I think they'll play him, because he, as Andrew said, he's been brought for that much money. He's been brought to play. He's been brought to be our striker, and they'll want to get him in the side as quickly as possible, because, as you've said, he's different to the other forwards that we've got. So we'll have to play to him in a different sort of way. And I think the sooner we can get him going, the better it's going to be for him and for the team. Because, when you watch the clips of him, as I'm sure everybody has done, logged onto YouTube and watched the obligatory highlights reel, he's strong. He can get the ball played up to him in the box and hold the defender off, turn and shoot. He's got a bit of pace. He can hold the ball up. And I think, if you're going to be critical of how we've played so far this season, we've given up possession relatively easily when it's gone into that central striker.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of struggled with that bit of the game. So I think they'll be really wanting Broby to get up to full fitness, get in the team, and give us that outlet to be able to do it. Because if we've got the outlet there and he can hold the ball up, even for 4 or 5 seconds, and get the likes of Diarra, Siddiqui, Adingra, Talby, whoever else, running on 5 seconds further up the pitch, that's massive for us. And I do agree with Andrew. I think Broby will be starting if he's kind of looked sharp and looked at business and training this week.
Right, let's wrap up with some predictions then, Andrew. What do you reckon is going to happen? How do you see the game playing out?
Well, I am always positive about Sunderland, but I do see us is having a good chance of winning. Martin talking there about having somebody up front who's just able to help get the rest of the attacking players up the pitch has really got me licking me lips almost. I think we can have a go at Villa. I must admit, I was a bit confused. I just automatically saw, we're on TV, it's a Sunday game. Aston Villa must have been in European competition in the week. But then on Thursday night, there was actually more Champions League football. So that kind of threw me out. Villa did play in the League Cup and actually started quite a strong side, but it was on Tuesday night, I want to say. So there was me hoping, they've had some dodgy journey to the far end of Europe on a Thursday night. They're not landing. They're not
just
coming.
Brentford.
Aye. They're not coming to Sunderland on the back of a massive trek expedition type of thing. So they should be fairly sharp, Villa. From what I understand, McGinn. There's a few Villa fans aren't quite happy about how McGinn's been used this season. That the position he's had to fulfil is not necessarily his best. I think he's being asked to
play right wing, hasn't he?
Yeah. I think that's a good thing for us. We've all spoken about how important our midfield three are, and I can see us dominating in that part of the pitch. Sorry, not dominating, because as we've discussed, it's going to be interesting to see us playing against a team who are comfortable to have more possession. But I think our middle three are going to be important. I do fancy our chances, and even that is a mad thing to say. Villa are an established, consistent Premier League team. They're on about extending Villa Park and all this type of thing. And yet we can quite genuinely see ourselves as having a good chance of going up against them and being on par with them. So I'm pleased with how the club are in general. I'm confident that we're going to see a good game later today. And do we want predictions just yet, Gav, or are we going to wait for that?
Go for it.
I'm feeling in a good mood talking to you two lovely gentlemen, as Gav called us earlier today. And I'll say 2-0 with Broby getting a couple of assists, just knocking it down for somebody else to finish off and put in the net.
Nice one. Martin, what about you?
Well, it was either lovely gentlemen or nerds, wasn't it? So you can take...
I've forgotten that bit, yeah.
Lovely nerdy gentlemen.
Lovely nerds. Lovely nerds, there you go. On the predictions on the website this morning, I went same scorelines, Andrew, 2-0 to us. And, I will again say, if you offered me a point now, I would probably snap your hand off for it. Because I think any points we can pick up, just tick them off, put them in the bag and move on. But I do think it's a really good opportunity to get another 3 points. I think Villa's confidence, it'll be naturally down. I think they're probably quite fragile in terms of their confidence. And if we go off to a good start with the crowd behind us, then we can get all 3 points. So I'm going for a 2-0 win. I have gone for Diarra to get a goal. I do think he's got goals in his locker. And the other bit with that, I reckon if we get a penalty, he could take it, because there was a bit of conversation with Lefay around the Brentford penalty, wasn't it? I think he said afterwards, Habib wanted it, he can have the next one or something like that. So I reckon if we get a penalty, and whether you agree with that or not, I don't know. And I'm not sure if he's taken them before, but I suspect if we get a penalty, he will want to take it. Whether he does not, doesn't matter. But I have gone for him because I do think he's got goals in his locker, and I think we need to start getting goals from those wide positions and those more attacking midfield positions. So, hopefully he can get off the mark, and if he can contribute 5 or 6 goals this season, then it's a pretty good return.
Yeah, that would be a couple of clean sheets as well, wouldn't it? Which would mean that Aston Villa would, I think it would be is it a record? No, there would be the 3rd team in top flight history to fail to score in any of their first 5 league games. And the other teams to do that were Ipswich in 1970-71 and and Crystal Palace in 2017-18 season.
Well,
so
it's a different Sunderland, hopefully, touch wood, fingers crossed, all that sort of stuff. What are you reckon, Gav? What are you going for?
I'm going to go with 1-0. I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I think we're going to be very...
None of us think Villa are going to score. There you go. That's a bloody kiss of death.
You know what's coming now, then, don't you? No, I'll go with a 1-0, and I've got a feeling that one of the new lads is going to score. Who's it going to be though? Yeah, I think I'll agree with you and say Diarra. I think he's come close a few times with a couple of long rangers. One of them's going to fly in the top corner eventually, aren't they?
Yeah.
He gets that chance, doesn't he? He sort of skips away in the middle of the park and just lashes it. One of them's going to hit the back of the net eventually. So I'm going 1-0, Habib Diarra with the goal. It'll be about midway through the first half. And then Villa will go in at half-time, scratching their heads, a bit frustrated. And that's when you'll see the genius of Régis Le Bris, where he manages to tinker his way through the rest of the game and get the lads over the line. I'm going 1-0. So yeah, 3 clean sheets. So when we concede a goal, you know who to direct your ire at. It was definitely our fault. But yes, I think I do. I just fancy us, and I agree with kind of what you said there, Martin. I think this is an unbelievable opportunity. I don't think Villa are going to be shit all season. They're going to turn a corner at some point. Might well be against us, and we wouldn't be surprised because when we've looked at the players they've got, they're a cracking squad. They've got so much quality there, but they do have a couple of players missing. I mentioned Onana before. I mentioned Tielemans before. That's key because that's a top-class midfield pairing. Kamara's coming back in for this one, who is good. Yeah. But as Jacob told us on the preview that I did with him, he's not played in a while. They're probably only going to get an hour or so out of him. And it might be a very good hour. But once he has to come off, it's then bringing on your 4th and 5th and 6th choice players, isn't it? So let's see how it kind of goes. But I'm just focusing on Sunderland. I think we're going to be confident. We know what we've got to do to win the game because we know exactly how they're going to play. And I know that sounds obvious, but I've mentioned the styles clash. I do think that weighs heavily in our favour as opposed to heavily in Villa's favour. They're not going to want to come and I just think we're an intimidating team to come and play at the minute. You hear all the things people are saying about the atmosphere and the noise and the players then talking about how the vibe, that relationship is building. And
it is.
We know, it's often said that Sunderland's like an oil tanker and it's difficult to turn around, but once you do get it pointing in the right direction, it's very difficult to stop. You do feel like we're pointing in the right direction at the minute. And as long as we can keep that sort of momentum flowing in these home games, that's where we're going to pick up points, definitely.
The other thing that kind of gives me confidence, and Nick Barnes, I think it was when Nick Barnes was talking to me and Chris earlier in the week, he said something really interesting about Xhaka. And he was kind of pretty much saying that he's kind of almost like a player coach. And whether he's not officially player coach, but he is the manager on the field and he's working with the coaching staff as well as with the players. And to have somebody like that in the centre of the park, being able to make little changes, bark instructions at people, all that sort of stuff, who can really take control of the situation minute by minute. Because it's really hard to manage
respect ultimately as well, by the way.
It doesn't. You, correct. And you know, I've said it before, like if Granit says something, you do what everybody says, right? And it can be really hard for a manager to make changes during the game. You can't hear over the crowd noise. It's hard to get messages to people, all that sort of stuff. Xhaka can do that instantly on the field. And I just think that is so important. It's been so important already, but I think it's one to watch during the game, just how he's interacting with players and what he's kind of getting to do and how he's sort of conducting the team. And I just think that's going to be increasingly important as we go along. So games like today, well, every bloody Premier League game, it's a tough game. It's going to be a war of attrition for large parts of it. And we've got to hope the quality that we have, we use at the right time in the right way. But I've got confidence that Xhaka can kind of keep us tight and every player's doing the job that they need to do for every second of the game. And again, I think it's just so important. But it's interesting to watch if people haven't kind of kept their eye on Xhaka when he hasn't got the ball. He's pulling the strings. He's like the puppeteer, and his influence will grow and grow as people get more familiar and more used to the things that he's asking them to do.
Yeah. Well, we'll be back with a reaction pod after the game. I think it's me and Ant meeting up in the pub after the match, so we'll be hopefully talking about another win. That'll be out on your feeds not long after full time, I guess, a couple hours maybe after full time, so make sure you check that out. And then we're a day ahead, aren't we? So on Monday morning, but we're changing the schedule this week because we're a day ahead. So on this week, we'll be out on Tuesday instead of Monday this week. And on Monday, we should hopefully be joined by Phil Smith of the Sunderland Network to chat all about the game. So lots coming up on the feeds. If you're not already subscribed to How We're the Podcast, make sure you get subscribed. We've got plenty coming up as we do every single day. We've got new podcasts out every single day. Rotereport.sbnation.com is where you need to go for all your written content, written by fans, for fans just like yourself. Just leave me to say thank you very much, Martin. Appreciate it, mate.
Cheers, mate. Yes, enjoy the game.
Yes, and thank you very much, Andrew. Hopefully another 3 points. We're bouncing out the stadium again, mate.
Yeah, I can't wait. Talking to you two, I'm just now counting down the hours to when I get my jacket on and get heading down the stadium. I tell you what, people listening to this, hopefully at the moment, are going to be rushing around, getting all their jobs done this morning so that they're ready either in time to sit in front of the TV screen or get on the bus to the game. And isn't that just a nice feeling to be counting down the hours before a Sunderland game?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, listeners. We'll catch you on the reaction pod. We'll see you then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.